Welcome back to the Diversity Show. I'm your guest host, Matt Lownes, today, and I'm very happy to be joined by the president of Hampton's Pride, Tom House. Tom, how you doing today?
Okay, Matt, thank you very much for having me. Thanks to the Anti-Bias Task Force for thinking of me and Hampton's Pride, and we're going to talk about the parade a little bit.
Yeah, of course we have Mike in the room with us, M.Tracey.
Yes.
He does so much for our town, but including the Anti-Bias Task Force. Let's jump right into it.
Okay.
This year was very, very cool and special for Hampton's Pride. I first met you at the Bridgehampton High School when you guys had a student-run Don't Say Gay bill protest against Florida. So tell me a little bit about that first, just so we can get the viewers to understand how we first linked up.
Sure, that's something that grew out of Hampton's Pride as well. I teach at Bridgehampton School and got the superintendent's permission and the administration and the board's permission to have the first GSA there. It used to be called Gay Straight Alliance, now it's called the Genders and Sexualities Alliance. It's more inclusive language. And there was a pretty big student rally that was going against the Florida legislation of what's still the Don't Say Gay bill, and they had a We Say Gay rally, like We Say Gay. So our students were supposed to go to that. There was a mix up with the bus. And just couldn't get there. So I said, why don't you just ask the superintendent if we could have one at our school, and they said yes. So that's where we met. We had a We Say Gay rally east over right on the front lawn of Bridgehampton, and it was a nice turnout, including you. Thank you for coming.
Of course. But the irony is that almost overnight, all of a sudden, maybe a week later, I find out the village is throwing a Hampton's Pride. Yeah. And I'm like, wait, I just met that guy. How did this happen? What just happened overnight? So tell me, I'd love to know, who first came to you and said, let's have East Hampton's first ever Hampton's Pride parade?
Yeah, so not only East Hampton, but it was the first Pride Parade in the Hamptons,
wow.
In the East End. So, and, credit where credit's due, it was Mayor Larson who, mutual friend of ours, Jackie Dunphy, had known about. We had just created Hampton's Pride, the not-for-profit, based out east here, and they were talking about, how tough it was for some students still to come out, and the series of suicides out in, former East Hampton
I know, I
high school
remember,
students. Yeah, and, the mayor was like, what can we do about this? And my friend Jackie said, well, how about a parade? How about something really visible, a visible show of support of the village for LGBTQ plus students and people in general? And so he called. I was shocked. I was like, how did he even know who I was or who Hampton's Pride was? We were very, very new. And the fact that, he asked me would I like to organize the first Pride Parade. Of course we said yes. We're called Hampton's Pride. We're going to do the Pride Parade. But, it was scary. It was a scary ask, and we went with it. We had, it was too important not to do it.
Yeah, because in my head it went from right outside the Bridgehampton School to all of a sudden the entire village.
Right.
But it was awesome to see. I mean, there were so many people there. I mean, people from all over, not just the area and the Hamptons, but from Up Island. And I know that some people found out about it in the city and made their way out here. Tell me a little bit, and I'm going to play some video while you talk. Tell me a little bit about the types of people that were there and where they were coming from, and how big of an impact was it just on the ground that day. You didn't even have time to think, but tell me a little bit about how surprised were you about the crowd?
Yeah, I was surprised. So, we just didn't know how it was going to turn out. It had never been done before. I thought there was a lot of trust in our organization as well. And it was, I had a lot of trouble at first convincing certain people or certain groups that this was a thing, that this was legitimate, that, we're really having a Pride Parade. So the way it went was, I would call, like, say, for instance, when ARF, I would call ARF, and when ARF decided that they were going to be in it, then suddenly I get a call from another animal, the Southampton Animal Shelter, right? It was sort of like one led to another. Same thing with the schools. Like, it was really important to get a lot of teens present, and we had a lot of teens present, and I hope we'll touch on that later, but we want to get even more. But sort of one school led to another. We had 5 faith groups involved, which I was really happy about.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So George Dietrich, Pastor
Yep.
Dietrich at the Lutheran Church, there was a big Lutheran presence there. The Jewish Center of the Hamptons, Unitarian Universalists, Presbyterian, East Hampton Presbyterian, and also St. Luke's.
Yep.
So we had 5 faith communities there. That was very important. Show of support. We had students from 4 different schools. We want to expand that. And I also, made a point of I contacted Ola. We need more of a Latin presence.
Yes.
But they came, and that was great, and hopefully more next year. So I made a point of calling all the women I knew. This was not going to be like a gay male parade.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of women there. So I was really proud of the range of people that we got.
Were you surprised the age, from all the way to kids with their parents bringing them, to kids that maybe are out or want to come out, to people who have been out for 10 years and they're happy and dancing in the street, to old people who just wanted to come and check it out? I mean, tell me a little bit about that, because there were so many different types of people at this event.
Age range is great. We want, the whole spectrum of life. You saw more of the parade than I did, I have to say. And next year, it was a big thing to try to control. The numbers got
I could tell
way bigger than we thought
with the video right now. Yeah.
So I saw more of the parade on Facebook and some videos that people posted. But I'm really happy to hear, and I know some families that brought their kids out to watch and such. So that's exactly what we were aiming for. That big show of support for the LGBTQ plus community and their allies, right? Allies, all important allies. A big show of support. That and I think the mayor's impetus, like, how can we help these struggling kids? I mean, I think that was a really big step, and that it will continue. Like, if the town shows that, if the village, shows that kind of support every year, that will go a long way to making people feel safer. Maybe be able to be their more authentic selves without, sort of checking their impulses.
I'd love to jump into that. We talked off air, and I think, the greater question at hand is, a lot of people think, it's been 20 years, 30, 40 years of gay rights movements pushing forward the needle and getting to a place that everyone can, that kids can come out and feel comfortable, regardless of where they live and regardless of what political atmosphere their hometown or high school may be. Talk a little bit about that and the pressures that kids have while in the closet and afraid to really express themselves. Explain a little bit about that, because I think a lot of people at home may have a general understanding but not a deepened thought process of it all.
Yeah, so one thought that jumps to my mind is that a former student who graduated before we had the GSA at Bridgehampton, I heard, through a current member of GSA, them saying, "Oh, I so wish that group was there when I was going to school, because it would have helped me figure out who I was a lot faster."
Yeah.
So when I think about, like, coming out of the closet, I'm not even sure, students are just, they're forming their identities, they're discovering who they are, and they need a safe place to do that in. And, that gets pushed off, that discovering, and that who am I, that gets pushed off if they don't feel safe if they're not around people that are maybe having the same kind of questions, which is what the GSAs do, right? Which is what maybe a Pride Parade helps with, I'm hoping that, for instance, that, we got a number of schools to join us, right? Some schools said no, that they, even though they might have a GSA at their schools, that the students didn't feel safe enough. That they thought there'd be social repercussions. When they came back to school, would they be bullied with their families? Cast some shame on them, or maybe their families, maybe they're not out to their families yet. Walking down Main Street, that would, that's not something that they could do.
What does that do to a kid? What does that do as they're trying to figure out who they are in life and go through school and just be a normal kid? How does that change them maybe on a day-to-day level, being afraid to really be who they are, whether it's with their family, friends, community, and maybe the reason that they would have loved to go to the Hamptons Pride Parade, but just couldn't get themselves to do it?
Yeah, that's a good point, because some of those schools decided to come as spectators.
Yes.
And so what we're hoping is that, having seen that, wow, this parade went off, and the East Hampton Village Police were right there, shutting the streets down and making sure it was safe for everyone to walk down. I mean, it was a joyous day. We had no problems, So maybe seeing that, it's like, wow, these people walked down, and maybe some students that they knew from another school, they were able to walk down the street. Maybe I'll do it next year. That's what we're hoping for. I'm hoping to go to those schools, and they'll know who we are. We'll know that this is very legitimate, right? And that also that, okay, it's safe for us to join in. We'll have more schools. I don't really want to name names of the ones that came and the ones that were a little shy to come, but it was a real fear. And I went to a couple of schools to talk to the students, and I was lucky enough to get one student who spoke.
Yeah.
And I asked her to speak about the students that couldn't come and why they couldn't come. So we were lucky, I think, on this first time out.
If you don't mind me asking, what was her specific message that spoke to you at least?
I mean, when people talk about the parade and the speeches, we had speeches. They won't be as long next year, but they were very moved by hers, right? But she talks about having family support, and particularly from her mother. Yeah. Right. So and how thankful she was for that, and how she realized that wasn't that was special in a way that wasn't everyone's circumstances. So lucky enough to have the support at home, having support at school. There's a GSA at that school, and the Guildhall Arts Council is really big and supportive, and what a beautiful float that they walked in. Like any student from East Hampton could walk in that float that they created. So I think that that's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, and obviously no one knows how they may think they know, but no one truly knows how their parents will react. Right. Or how friends and family may react. They may have an idea, and it could be worse or better than what they originally thought. Right. Is that what you want the future of Hampton's Pride to be? At some point in my life, I've read a stat. I don't want to give a specific number, but if the suicide hotline said something along the lines of, if a LGBTQ kid has one ally, whether it's a neighbor, a post office worker that does their mailbox, a janitor, a teacher, someone, the chances, and I'm not going to say the number because I don't know at the top of my head, but the chances of committing suicide are much lower. Right. Is that what you want Hampton Pride to be, an outlet for people who may just honestly know how their parents are going to react, or think they know how their parents are going to react, and they just aren't ready and comfortable?
Yeah, of course. I want us to be able to support that. I'm so glad you brought this up, because that one of the people involved in the parade said, "Well, what's the call to action?" Yeah. And I was like, "Well, what do you mean?" And it's like, "Well, you got."
Jerry told me to throw a parade.
Right. It was the call to action, and so I sort of came up with that. It's just like, find one struggling student or one struggling, and I think I said it doesn't have to be LGBTQ plus, right? You don't have to identify,
No,
to be in the parade. In fact, that's what I told some of the schools. I was like, okay, so the students don't feel comfortable marching. Why don't you march? Why don't you get some faculty together? Why don't you get some parents? And just what a powerful message that would be to show the kids that we want you to be with us. Like, we support you. We think you're valuable for who you are, right? And yeah, so that's the call to action that, everyone there, and there were lots of people at that rally when we were giving speeches. So if they heard that, to find just one, right, and bring them next year, bring them to see the parade, bring them to walk in it, walk beside them, walk with them, everyone's welcome in the parade. It's LGBTQ plus allies.
Yeah, in pop culture, in movies, especially in TV shows and movies, within the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, you'll often see a narrative of that older person in a younger person's life being the ally. But there's also people that don't have an ally, and there's people that live in areas of true hate. I mean, we can't sit here and deny that there's hate, whether it's in this country or the rest of the world, and that people don't have the same opinions as maybe me and you do.
Right.
How can normal, everyday citizens who may not know anyone help? How can they be a part of the solution and the long-term recognition that, and this is my opinion, that everyone's equal and everyone's the same and everyone has the right to love and partnership and raise kids and all that. Everyone deserves that right in America.
Right. Well, I mean, part of it is education.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it's exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Which the parades did a lot.
Yeah.
Provided a lot of exposure. It's about being visible. Parades are about being visible. A few people asked me that. I was like, well, what's the point of walking down Main Street? And it's just being visible. Like look how many of us we are. So I think that's part of it, and education. I know people, get a little lost with the expanding alphabet, the LGBTQ plus.
Yes.
It's a little unwieldy to say sometimes, but I've learned to love that. Especially the plus at the end, the inclusiveness of it. So many different types of gender identification, so many different types of sexual orientations. That's why we had to get rid of the GSA, Gay Straight Alliance, because that's just two. Like, where's all the others? So that comes from education. Like some sort of middle-aged gay lesbians, right? It's like, oh, I can't say all those letters.
No, yeah, and that's.
But we need to learn to say them. We need to include everyone, and so I think everyone can learn a little bit more. My students teach me all the time that kids know this stuff so much better than I do.
Well, and that's what I was.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say is like. You don't necessarily have to understand, but you could still be an ally.
Yes.
You can say, well. For me, it's hard for me to understand certain things, but you can also say, but I support you.
Absolutely.
A lot of people see the issue as very black and white, and unfortunately, because of things like in Florida and different parts of the country, there's a lot of hate revolved around it, and really, I think a lot of it stems from ignorance and exposure and not knowing any better, and parents, unfortunately, have a lot of ideological pressure put on their kids because you learn from your parents and that's your life. You go home to them every single day. So with that being said, did at any point of the parade, did anyone come up to you or maybe tell you afterwards, I learned so much, or I didn't even know that this or that, or I thought I was going to be uncomfortable but I had the greatest time, without saying names obviously, because that would be awful putting someone on the spot like that, but without saying names, can you kind of tell the audience a little about something like that?
Sure. I heard that over and over again.
Yeah.
And coming from, like, say, gay men of, like, 50, 60 years old saying, I really didn't know what to do at first. And then all of a sudden I was like, then I was just, I knew what to say. I knew what to chant or cheer or whatever. What someone in that group said, how did he put it? He's like, I always felt like I was welcome here, but I never felt embraced. And he felt that the parade was an embracing of, LGBTQ plus people. I heard about students. One, that was just sobbing, and somebody thought, like, what's wrong? It's like, I just never thought I would see anything like that in this town. And, as a good thing, that, wow, this is something I never thought I'd see. So I heard those stories over and over again. And I got emails about, you don't know how transformative this was for us and how it just sort of changed the way, I'm thinking about, the Hamptons or my place in the Hamptons, things like that. So that's very, very gratifying. Like a lot of the, just the things people said, the things they wrote. And from once again, from all the way young to, people that you would think it's like, well, you've been around, you've been out for so long. But still for them, that was, something new.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the coolest part is that a lot of people had their own doubts about the area they live in, the town, the government, the people that live out here. And then you actually do it, and you see the results, and you see that, no, someone didn't go down and try to have a counter protest, right. and a group of people didn't try to, do something stupid that we saw often throughout the country over the last few years. Yeah. But it, I guess my question is, how do we ensure, like, moving forward with the parade, how do we expound on it? How do we make sure that something comes out of it and it's not just a yearly thing that is done out here and people just, where it almost becomes a normality where I don't think we want it to be a sense of normality. We want it to be a sense of, well, we're doing this for a reason. We're not just doing it to have a parade.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because part of me is thinking that the parade was so successful the first year because it was the first year, right? And this is something new, and it's like, oh my goodness, Pride Parade in the Hamptons, and why hasn't there been one before? And now there is, and we're going to be part of it. But going back to, a lot of people just didn't really quite believe it, or they didn't, Hampton's Pride is on the map in the way it wasn't before. But now they'll know it's legit. Like the streets were closed, and we walked, and we had, there seems to have been like over 1,000 people there.
Yeah.
For the Hamptons, that's a good crowd. Right? So I think next year, I don't see any problem with the heart being in the right place. Like, the idea of this is to, for me, the most important thing are the younger people, that they feel safe, that they can discover who they are. And they can do it here. This is not like a place that they have to flee from. You know what I mean? This is a place where they can thrive in. As an LGBTQ plus person. But then also, I think about those people that said, well, it was felt welcome, but we're never embraced. So we want to keep that up. So I don't think there'll be any problem with this coming year, because I think the people that were sort of standing off to the sidelines and wanted to get involved, I think they'll probably come in. Looking forward, how do we keep this as something that we're doing? Because, I always think back to the reasons that the mayor had for starting this, like, how can we help these kids in trouble, right?
Well, and that's
so
what...
I always keep that in the forefront.
Yeah, and I think that's what people forget. Obviously, the parade was a great time. I showed the audience some footage, and everyone was having a great time. But at the end of the day, we did this for the exact opposite emotion. When I was in high school, there was a student I sat next to that on Friday was in class, and Monday we were talking about the fact that he killed himself. Wow. And I was young. I was a freshman or sophomore in high school. I think it makes you think, that's for sure, but there was no resources. There was, the only conversation we had was with our business law professor, and nothing against her, but she's not qualified in that regard. She's not a grief counselor. She's not an LGBTQT specialist. She's none of that. And I think, my question is, how do we ensure that these resources, and I'm assuming via Hampton's Pride, are just that kids know about it?
Yeah. Well, I will be back at the schools trying to get more people to come into the parade. But like you said, it can't all be about the parade. Eventually we want to have services, we want to branch out and see what we can do, to see what the community needs. When I think about educators, I don't know, take a look at your curriculum. Is there anything in it, stories that involve LGBTQ plus characters? What part of the curriculum invites that part of the population in? Once again, visibility. Think about different ways in which people can see themselves, and see themselves as being, embraced. So I'm thinking as an educator right now, like what are the books we're reading, what are the stories we're reading, what are the subjects that we discuss, what are the, the current events that we talk about. The rally that you came to, I think that's something that we want to keep going. And two ministers there, by the way.
Yeah.
God says yes to love.
Yeah.
That was George Dietrich. And this pastor loves you, with the pastor in rainbow colors. We had one program Hampton's Pride have, and we're going to do this again. It was called LGBTQ plus faith. And we had certain LGBTQ plus clergy that were talking about what it was like for them within the religion. So we had two speakers. They were terrific.
Yeah.
And we plan to do that more, and think about programs like that. But you're talking about how can the students find out about it too. So that's going to be in the back of my mind.
So we are low on time here. I'd be remiss, though, to ask, A, your final thoughts, and then B, if you could just let people know your website and how to contact you.
Great, thank you. Well, first of all, the parade is now annual. So it's the first Saturday of June, so the next one, June 3rd,
Awesome.
2023. That was very generous on the village's part to offer that for us. So we want to keep that going. It's Hampton's Pride, hamptonspride.org. We didn't come about, the parade's become a major thing for us now. It's probably what we'll be focusing on. But we came out of building, our idea is to build a memorial or a historical marker where the swamp used to be.
Awesome,
Which is the last and longest running gay club in the Hamptons.
Yeah.
It's actually the longest running club in the Hamptons.
Oh, wow.
But it's also a gay club, so it was a gay club. Closed in 2001. So it became a star room for a while, and then it became a park after a while. So we're raising money to build an outdoor social area dedicated to LGBTQ plus population and allies on the East End, right on the footprint of the swamp in that corner of Wainscott Green. So that's how we started. And then the mayor calls with the, how would you like to organize a parade? So these are our two big things that we're focusing on. Building something there, like an outdoor social area, and that's something that I hope, students, kids will meet at, right where their gay and lesbian forebears used to hang out, So, and then we have the parade going as well. So, and then hopefully developing other social programs or, small events like LGBTQ plus faith, things like that.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
For the president of Hampton's Pride, Tom House, I'm Matt Lownes, and this is the Diversity Show. Thank you so much for watching.